Hello there. Welcome to Coaching with Tally. We are recapping our series that we've been in on peace, increasing peace in your life, really getting to that place where you can contain some of the chaos that's going on internally and manage all of the things that steer us into overwhelm. So we have been in this series for a couple of weeks now, and one of the really significant things when you are learning something is to go back and review it. It's exponential in what it allows you to lock in and retain and really begin implementing into your life. And so I wanted to go back and just key in on some of the high points, review some of the things so that in your brain, neurologically, when we go in and we retrieve information and we integrate it into our lives more, it's so much powerful in its sticking power. So we're going to go back and just touch in on a few of the things that are takeaways for you and implementing some of these things into your life. So today we're going to go over three of the things that we did in the Peace series. Let me actually introduce who I am. My name is Tally. I'm a life and personal development coach, and I work with leaders to create lives of overflowing impact in the world that are centered in joy, getting you aligned to who it is you most truly are, firing on all cylinders. We look at every important area of life and get you dialed in and focused up and living out of your goals in those areas. And really, the whole thing is about getting you into a place of overflow, having created a life that you love living and just living in overflow, making a difference for others in the world. So today we're going to talk about multitasking. Let's start there. So one of the things that a lot of us do, and I work with private clients, and I do some group coaching, facilitate retreats, and facilitate a mastermind. And so I work with a lot of high achievers, and across the board, one of the things that we are so guilty of, and in our culture in general, we are guilty of trying to maximize, and we find ourselves multitasking all the time. I talked about how this is definitely an area for me that I am still working on regularly. I catch myself many, many times a day, finding myself in the middle of doing multiple things at the same time. And there's some part of me that really likes it. But when you look at the scientific data behind it, it is so not effective. And I was just talking with my assistant a little bit ago about the people who get so much done, the people who I'm connected to, whether it's clients or there's a business consultant friend of mine, just people that I've connected with. I had an assistant at one point that I was just always blown away by how incredibly efficient she is. My assistant now, same way, just incredibly efficient. But one of the things that marks all of them is that they stay on one thing at a time, they get it done, and then they move on to the next thing. They don't try to multitask, but they're way more efficient than the average person. And so I'm like, that's so interesting because it feels so counterintuitive. But when you look at the science behind multitasking, it's not actually possible to truly multitask. What is going on when you're doing multiple things at the same time? What is actually going on is that your brain is switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the productivity that we lose in each one of those transitions is really massive over time. They say, they've done studies, Harvard has done studies, University of Sussex has done extensive studies, and they've shown that a couple things. One, that it actually damages your brain to do that. So that seems counterintuitive too in some ways because there's all those mind games and stuff that sharpen your brain. The thing that multitasking does is it does the opposite. So it seems like maybe you're sharpening something, you're not. You're actually draining, how did they say it? It actually damages our brains to frequently attempt to multitask. Now I want to make a distinction. There are certain things that you can multitask that are really helpful. So doing things that are mindless, like walking, maybe driving, doing dishes. Sometimes there are things that you're doing that don't require like focus of your brain. You can kind of do them because they're autopilot. Doing those things with high focus activities actually can be beneficial. But when you're trying to focus on multiple different things, it actually hinders what it is we're trying to do. So there is, so that one of the studies said that only 2.5% of the population can actually multitask. The rest of us, we're actually making it a lot harder for ourselves. 40% increase in productivity by focusing on one thing at a time. Isn't that interesting? And there's a video that I put out when I did this particular video. That was one of the big things that locked it in for me. When I was at a training out in California, and the person who I was mentoring under, he played this video for us to show multitasking. And it was kind of for something else, but it locked it in for me. It showed two guys side by side that had the same exact tasks to do. One was going to stay focused one thing at a time. One was going to like do it however he wanted to and multitask. And you could just watch them, and like the productivity just went down, 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 down every time this guy multitasked. Every time he took a call, every time he did an email in between what he was trying to build. It was wild to watch it. So multitasking is one of those things that if we can start to limit our multitasking, we will actually increase peace in our life. It's a way to just bring more peace and just to stay focused on one thing at a time, to prioritize what it is you're going to do one thing at a time, and then to move on to the next thing. So there you go, multitasking. The next one I want to review with you guys is the day that we did Choose Another Thought. So that's all about interpretation and the power of our interpretation. When we have a filter in life that, let's just give an example, like life is happening to me versus life is happening for me. So that is like an interpretation that we can have on the same exact circumstances coming into our life. But when we have a filter that is a not such an empowering filter, when we have an interpretation that actually does not support us into a productive direction, our brains are wired to reinforce the things that we believe. So if we believe we're in this place like that feels kind of like a victim, like things are happening to me, or you hear people say like, oh my gosh, could I freaking just catch a break? Hang on one second. Hey Taylor, could you get the door for Jonathan? He's gonna try and buzz in. He just got here. I can see out my window. If you have this interpretation like things are happening to me, that then when challenging things happen, it's like, there it is again. Like, I can't get a break. I can't get ahead of this thing. You say things like that, your brain is going to look for evidence of that thing over and over and over again. So you will look for evidence. Sorry, we had a little glitch there. Your brain will look for evidence to reinforce the things that you believe. So looking at the beliefs that you have is a really, really important thing to just take the time to do, because those filters are super, super powerful in terms of reinforcing things that either work or don't work for us. So there are a lot of things that we do that are just not empowering, and they're from beliefs that we have. They are from things that keep happening over and over and over again. So have another thought, really investigating and looking at the beliefs that we have that are reinforcing things that happen to us and how we feel about it. So you could also have, I'm videoing. Can you go to the front? Go to the front. Sorry. So let's go to assumptions. Assumptions is our third one and the last one we're going to do for today. So the definition of an assumption is accepting as true without proof. So when we assume that something is accurate to our estimation without having actual proof of that, it sets us up for a lot of challenging things. So our reasoning minds are always looking for explanations. So our brain is wired to create an explanation for whatever it is that's going on in life, because that actually makes us feel secure. To say like this is happening and I don't know why is really hard for our brains. We'll actually put an explanation for something even if it's completely wrong, just to have an explanation. Our brains are actually wired to function in questions. It's interesting, but if you start looking at it, I read a great book called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. And it goes into a little bit more about this, how our minds are always asking questions and always wanting to answer questions. So if you change the questions that you're asking, you actually can change, like massively change your outcomes. It's really, really fascinating. But it's based on, like, this whole thing of making assumptions is based on that theory that we are always asking questions, and that when we make assumptions, a lot of times that is our way of just bringing this, it's kind of a false sense of security, especially when we make assumptions that don't actually support us. So, so asking questions like, so in situations relationally, asking questions like, so let me just clarify, or what I hear you saying is, rather than assuming what it is that's going on with a person, just bringing more clarity by asking more questions and better questions. So instead of assuming, getting clarity in relationships is a huge way to bring more peace into your life. Because when you make assumptions, it sets you up for all kinds of challenges. So there you go. Those 3 things: assumptions, looking at your interpretation, and really limiting multitasking. So your call to action, the thing you can activate today around multitasking, is to be aware of it, to make a list of your top priorities for the day, to prioritize them, put them in order, and then focus on one thing at a time. So that's my challenge for myself and for you today around multitasking. With the interpretation, just start noticing the interpretations that you have and where that is steering you into. That's really a just notice kind of a thing. And then the activation around assumptions is to clarify, ask questions, especially when you're in conversation with other people and you find yourself starting to assume something. Just say, hey, just want to clarify, or help me understand if I'm hearing you correctly. What I hear you saying is, and just get more clarity rather than making assumptions. So blessings, everybody. I hope that's supportive for you to go back and touch back in on some of these places that we visited, and in terms of just increasing peace in your life. So blessings. We're going to have another day of review tomorrow. This weekend, I'm going to field some questions that have been coming in, and then we're going to kick off a new series next Monday. So blessings. I hope you have an amazing, amazing day. Sending you lots of love. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Blessings.